Perfect. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, Assalamu alaikum. It's an honor for me to be here today in Baghdad. It's always great to see conferences happen in Baghdad. It's amazing to see all the sort of companies and policymakers, others who are interested in work in Iraq to be in the capital. I mean, I actually echo what the General Secretary of OPEC mentioned about the 59th anniversary of the OPEC formation in Baghdad. At the same time, with the return of all the oil and gas companies into Iraq after the nationalization of the oil industry. So it's always great to be here. Thanks for the organizer for inviting me over here. I'm just going to give you a short story about what we're doing in Iraq and the way that we're trying to unlock potential from Rumaila. But just before that, I think it's always good to start with positioning how BP is doing in the Middle East. So we are in right. It's something that I'm good at technology, but it always fails with me. But I'll try my best. But anyways, that shows the countries that BP work in. So we are in Abu Dhabi. We have a long-term sort of concession with ADNOC. We are in Oman and Kuwait, and obviously Iraq. With respect to Iraq, BP was the first company that entered Iraq, and in fact, Kirkuk oil field. Baba in particular was discovered in 1927 by BP. If you happen to go to Kirkuk, you will see well number 1 still obviously there, and hopefully will be there for a longer period of time. It used to be one of the major oil fields in the world. I think at that time was producing just over a million barrel. And then followed by Zubair, which was discovered in 1948, and then Rumaila in 1953. All these fields are still being managed. BP was the first company that entered Iraq after 2009. So very pleased to be there. 59th anniversary of OPEC, and then the return of all the oil and gas companies into Iraq. That's a big achievement. Right, so this is quite an interesting chart because every time I look at it and I see the life cycle of Rumaila in particular, and I can see that the field has been impacted by geopolitics and all the sort of, the conflicts in the region. But you can see the dynamic of how the field has sort of responded, and it shows and actually emphasizes the need for us as a strategy to manage the reservoir, make sure that the field is managed properly going forward. I mean, we took over in 2010. The field was producing just under a million barrel a day, and we are 1.5 million barrel a day today. So this is the largest oil field in Iraq. But look at the dynamics here, and then see how the field has been impacted. It's a 60 years old field with equipments that age more than 6 decades. So you can see the challenges that the operator, which I'm going to go to, the information of obviously Rumaila Operating Organization, partnership between BP, PetroChina, and BOC and SOMO have got together. They've drawn the strategy of how to develop the oil field going forward. It's an interesting story when I talk about Rumaila, largest oil field in Iraq. It's probably the second largest oil field in the world. It is about 40% of Iraq's production, 25% of the GDP in country in Iraq, and it actually hosts more than 7,000 local workforce. And it's amazing how you see this place. And when I came here in 2010, and if I compare this through the partnership that we had with PetroChina and BOC and SOMO, it's just amazing when I see the same people who have built their capability, who have basically achieved all the sort of technical expertise, and I can see them as the future leaders of the field going forward. So it's a fascinating story, but it's a massive field, 1,600 square kilometers of land about 14 degassing stations. All of them are out, being built in the 50s and 60s, and it's an amazing place to work for. But it comes with a challenge, obviously, and as in the chart over here, you see the way that it's been managed. The natural decline rate of Rumaila is about 17%. So to put that into context, if I think about sort of maintaining 1.5 million barrel of production every day, the operator has to produce an additional incremental of 250,000 barrel a year just to maintain production. So it's an amazing challenge that we all go through when it comes to Rumaila. But let me talk about sort of, some of the, the success stories of what we try to achieve through our partnership in Rumaila. So it's quite interesting, to see how this field has evolved since 2010. So more than 350 wells have been drilled, and obviously the challenge we get over there is the water that we have to inject in the ground. So the field has never seen an amount of water that's been injected at the moment since it was discovered. It's about 1.4 million barrel of water is injected every day. And then primarily this is to energize the reservoir so that we can get more oil recovery. I think it's wise to say over here that we as the lead contractor of Rumaila Operating Organization have worked with our partner and with BOC, obviously, and PetroChina to ensure that we develop a strategy for Iraq, for the prosperity of Iraq, in terms of developing not just the oil production and increased oil production, but it's more about building capabilities, working with our local contractors, and ensuring that there's a competitive advantage within the country so the local communities can actually benefit from a super major field like Rumaila in Iraq. So we have awarded more than $4 billion, in fact, like $4.5 billion of contracts to local companies. And it's amazing how those companies have evolved over time and now competing with international companies. Local capabilities has really helped us to ensure that we introduce efficiency at a time where the oil price dropped in 2014 onward, and then obviously giving us the opportunity to make sure that we rely on modernization and transformation to bring those capability up. Now our cost per barrel have dropped significantly from 5 point something in 2014 to $1.5 as lifting costs. And then if I add the total cost with capex, it's about $3.5 a barrel. You don't see a field like Rumaila in the world where the oil price, the cost per barrel is that low. So that obviously gives a leading edge in terms of the Ministry of Oil, in terms of thinking about the future strategy for developing Rumaila. And I would obviously conclude here by saying, it's an enormous challenge that we went through and we're going through at the moment, but it's not any different from what we have seen back in 2010. It's just a different set of challenges. But we obviously capitalize on the capability development of people that we have with us in Rumaila. 93% of our workforce is actually local Iraqis. So that obviously will help, along with introducing technology, building those capability, will definitely take us to the next phase of Rumaila. And this is a time that we are discussing with the government of Iraq of how the field is going to look like in the years to come. So it's a fantastic opportunity for all the all the sort of processes and technology that we have adopted in country, giving us the edge over the future in terms of developing Rumaila. And we continue working with the government of Iraq, represented by the Ministry of Oil, to find more efficiencies and then introduce what we need to do here to bring more prosperity to the country. And as Mandela says, always, it always seems hard, it seems impossible until it's done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yasseri. Dr. Sun. Excellency, Laurie Abi Kadip, and the Minister, and the other ladies and gentlemen, colleagues. It's a great honor for me to join this fifth Iraq Energy Week meeting. And it's the first time for me to visit Iraq, and also first time for International Energy Forum to join this meeting. And we feel honored to join this. I'm honored to be speaking here today at the 5th Iraq Energy Forum in Baghdad. My sincere appreciation to all the government and organizers to invite me to go there. Iraq has shown the tremendous progress over the years. Part of that progress is attributable to its vibrant energy sector, but is continued to evolve. However, the development and continued growth of that sector is dependent on the investment needed for upstream development and technologies. I will outline 4 key points when it comes to investment and technologies in upstream development. Energy market volatility changes the investment, the preferences, and energy transition create a new uncertainty in outlooks, and the greater investment and new technologies is needed to meet the future energy demand. And the fourth is a new emerging risks need more dialogue. The first, to elaborate further, the volatility in the energy market due to a combination of factors, including an evolving energy landscape, challenges through globalization, and an oversupplied oil market all factor investment. The advent of the shale technology brings with a new supply onto the market along with greater investment flexibility. Spending and operations in the shale business can be ramped up to or down depending on the market shifts and offer more agility in investment decisions in times of volatility. Shale oil will account for roughly half of total U.S. production in 2019. The Permian Basin alone will account for almost half of that 7.8 million barrels per day of growth in production. Long-term investment have been put on hold in both the hydrocarbons and the nuclear sector, with the U.S. shale and other short and medium cycle production coming available. The second one is about fossil fuels will remain relevant to achieve the UN 2030 Agenda Sustainable Development Goals. Mitigating the effect of climate change requires innovation and energy efficiency gains in hydrocarbon supply chains to facilitate orderly energy transitions and that ensure affordable, reliable, and sustainable energy for all. Energy transition and its associated the components has brought with more forward-looking and dynamic elements into the current energy landscape to reach the global goals. The energy transition effectively acts as a new market fountain, given new considerations such as the impact of carbon pricing mechanisms, disruptive technologies, and a changing risk environment. This raises the questions about the social inclusivity and the long-term licensing to operate at its potential to the industry. Yet, it is important to know that the world will still need oil and fossil fuels. In fact, global fossil fuel demand will range between 60 to 75%, according to both IEA and OPEC. How we reconcile the rise of alternative fuels and the sustainability with the relevance of fossil fuels depend on the innovation and efficiency that shall determine the pace of orderly energy transitions. Secure and orderly energy transition builds a sustained and substantial investment in all the energy sources, including fossil fuel production, to fuel the economic development and meet the steady rising global demand for energy. So timely investment and new technologies in conventional oil infrastructure in combination with the clean technology to supply energy in line with economic development and the sustainable energy requirements is a major priority long term. World economic growth is projected to more than double GDP by 2040, with the global population rising well above 9 billion people. In addition to a growth population that will naturally increase oil demand, petrochemicals will see the greater growth with more than a third of the growth in world oil demand in 2030, and nearly half of the growth to 2050. This will add nearly 7 million barrels oil demand according to the IEA. Aviation and shipping fuels will also see a demand growth around 3 million barrels per day. Even with the electric vehicles growing rapidly, oil demand from 1 billion internal combustion engines vehicles required worldwide will only be modestly affected. If the issue will leave to us, that is the upstream technologies and the EORs on how to further enhance the oil recoveries, and at the same time to reduce the operating cost and protect the reservoirs. So all this energy transition and energy transformation with the new techs, with the artificial intelligence, with the big data, clouds, and also smart grids, all these are the important part for the next phase of this. And then the last one is geopolitical instability and other extreme factors have the potential to dampen energy demand growth, which in turn further reduces the investment in much needed oil and gas upstream development. However, these risks can be managed through the trust and the goodwill built up through the producer-consumer dialogue, an emergency mechanism provided by spare capacity and the selected stocks. Globalization challenges such as the US-China trade conflict, sanctions on Russia and Iran, and the political instability in Venezuela can have a drastic effect on the energy market, but the consequences can be managed through the diplomacy, dialogue, and collaboration. As a unique neutral facility of ongoing informal, open, inclusive, and well-informed data-driven global energy dialogue, IEF is well placed to uphold the global partnership on energy security and enable orderly industry transformations in a rapidly changing and ever more challenging world. While upstream development continues to be dependent on the multiple market factors, more dialogue and openness will help to ensure this sustainability and the growth requirements become more mutually reinforcing, and that the policies and technologies work together in tandem to ensure a balanced, healthy, and robust energy future for all. Thank you again for giving me the chance to talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sun. Mr. Al-Husseini, if you would like to give a few words, if you prefer here at the podium. Yeah, sure.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Your Highness, Dr. Luay, the Minister of Electricity, the distinguished guest, colleagues, friends, I think it comes today to almost the 10th year since Iraq started the oil field development. And today is the 3rd year of our participation as a company with Iraq Energy. We have seen things going from the startup until today. Sadly enough, there's until today, a lot of companies outside of Iraq, when you start talking to them, they still raise the topic of the challenges that we have today in Iraq, whether it is logistical inequality of regulations, the local challenges. I think today, as an insider, I see things as came to a quite change since the day one we started from all aspects. We do believe, I mean, it's been for some time already, a message is coming from all the conferences that we've been involving in, or today from the morning as well, talking about how the Upstream is going to look like in 2020 or after. Everyone is scared, everyone have a concern. For us as a small and medium companies, as a local oil field service companies, we're still looking at this as still a challenging market. We're still looking at it as an opportunity for us. I think Zaid has mentioned on his presentation about the amount of work has been given to the local companies until they reach to a level competing the international companies. So I think the coming phase, Iraq has seen 2014 is a very high activity period, or early of 2014, before the oil prices went down. And we do think that this is not coming back, at least in the coming future, in the soon future. However, we do see that the phase of Upstream has been changed. Iraq is one of those countries with relatively low cost per barrel in compared to other countries. We don't really require a very high tier technology yet. If I would say that the next phase is be more investment, more technology, it would be not the right sentence to be given. However, I think the most important part is what everybody keeps saying is by empowering the local community, by empowering the local people. Today we're hiring, we're continue hiring from the day one we started. The concept that we're working on is that we have to create our own people, we have to train our own people inside Iraq, because a fact, I'm part of this country, but it's very hard to maintain them unless you continuously hire them, train them. They are very, we're looking at young engineers or young people who graduated from universities. The first thing they come asking for is training, progress, and career, which is an added value. So I would say today, until today, unfortunately, we're still quite dry in terms of the skills. I would say the skilled manpower in oil and gas in the sector that we're operating in particular. And we still need more, you know. However, that's one part that we're all working on it. And I've listened to all presentation today, starting from Siemens to other companies and BP, about the amount of people that they're training every year. There is one more part which we as a Gilgamesh working on for the last almost 2 years right now. There is a second part which the existing people in the organization today. Iraq has honestly, I've seen the service part in particular. I have been into industrial facility with the Ministry of Industry. Iraq has a massive infrastructure that require a serious attention. When I say that it can be brought to life with a serious push for this, and that will contribute dramatically, not by decreasing the oil the oil cost only, but by activating the inactive organizations and equipment that being, for me, what I see, I think it can run all entire Iraq market today, right? And when I'm talking over here, I'm talking in particular about the oil field service associated services. So we have been trying, a lot of companies been trying since 2010 to work in models of partnership and models of joint ventures. It's a very long way to go, but I think we all should get out of the mentality of just trying to get we do partnership with government, so we ease our life. That's the concept that we have. Reality is that it's the same concept of what Siemens today presented. You need to work for the community. You're staying longer. But you have to think seriously, what is the added value of of the government on this, or of the society on this. So we look at the coming years. I think we have as well started connecting the Ministry of Industry by trying to activate some of the existing manufacturers or idle manufacturers to bring them back to life, so to supply big part of the product that we are today consuming ourselves and importing as an industry from outside. However, this is a very, very sensitive topic as well, because we can see clearly that there is no a proper communication between some ministries with others. You see, we put a restriction on importing from one hand, and there is no producing yet in Iraq, but there's an intention of producing, and we all get stuck. So there are this kind of challenges. I do believe that Ministry of Industry and Ministry of Oil, we can see clearly, honestly, the contribution between the Ministry of Electricity and Oil. We feel it. I mean, we see it through the communication, through how things are moving. In a similar way, we need to have Ministry of Industry to be added on this cycle, Ministry of Trading as well, when putting a regulation to ease the process. So, and as a conclusion, until today, it's been 10 years already, and I still see Iraq is full of opportunities for all investors that they want to come in. But Iraq is Iraq, so you have to treat Iraq as a very special case. You go inside, see what's happening, then you design your capability to Iraq in particular. It's not UAE, it's not Oman, it's a different country. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Al-Husseini. Now we'll have a few words from Mr. Al-Qadi, Crescent Petroleum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. If you would allow me, I would like to give my speech in Arabic. Thank you very much. معالي السيد وزير الكهرباء الدكتور لؤي جواد الخطيب.
Electricity Minister, ladies and gentlemen, I am happy today to be here in Baghdad as a representative of Baghdad company, and I welcome the activities that Baghdad is hosting. The Crescent company is one of the very first companies in the Middle East that is 50 years old. That it's in almost everywhere in the Arab Gulf and in the Arab world in general. We have provided the Middle East needs in the and it has a clear impact, a very obvious impact in small period of time and less type of cost. It is led by an Iraqi team to serve their country. We consider Iraq as our natural country, and we are aspiring to help. We are aspiring to help that country, and we are one of the very first companies. We were able in a short period of times, a short period of time that is 15 months, to provide. It is a good time in comparing to what we have faced in Iraq at the beginning. We signed in the 6 months of last year with the oil ministry, like Basra and Muthanna. and we will implement our work in cooperation with the oil ministry next month. We believe in our role, in the importance of our role, that in addition to our ability to face the challenges that we are facing, counting on the modern techniques, Iraq is Iraq now is in need of the extracting rate of in terms of communication with the oil and the gas sector in Iraq. I won't take long, and eventually I'd like to thank the people who are behind this conference to invite us and to thank you very much. شكرا جزيلا سيد القاضي. وأخيرا سيد عدنان الجنابي، إن تفضلت وأعطيتنا كلمة. شكرا. أريد أن أتكلم.
may look incompatible. Today's production cost and long-term competition in the energy industry worldwide. As for costs, when I joined the oil industry in 1967, already Maurice Edelman's paper, Cost in 4 Areas, was in circulation. It was published later, I think, 69, 70. He found out that the cost of production in Iraq was somewhere in the region of 4 cents per barrel. This was the result of the Gusher Kirkuk 1, which was 100,000 barrels daily of production. And when you divide that by the cost which was put into the production of that amount of oil, you will find that it was very low. By today's prices, probably it could be somewhere in the region of 40 cents, given technical specifications of Kirkuk oil wells at the time. Today's cost of production in Iraq was unfortunately influenced very heavily by what was published by the Ministry of Oil in 2009, 2010, 2011, which really simply divided the cost, capital, and operating by the amount of oil produced during that year. The years which were reported and then developed forward from 1911, 12 to 1917, and the numbers in some cases were in the region of $18 per barrel. And the averaging out of some of those numbers from the Ministry of Oil were rounding between $10 and $11 per barrel. That is nowhere near what the economic cost, capital, and operating cost of the long-term life of the oil produced from the per barrel incremental oil produced by operating capital cost. We have to divide and use the total producible. Even if we use discounted cash flow, discounting the future, we still have to divide by the total life of the oil field. And actually talking about cost in a country is meaningless. We have to work by well and at least by field. Field to field, we have marginal cost increasing as we go into more difficult fields and lower producing fields. As for the implication of that for today's policy, we have to look into long-term supply cost and long-term potential competition in the oil industry, energy industry. We heard a rosy picture from Mr. Barkindo. From Mr. Sin, probably we heard a moderate view of the future. I will give you the worst case scenario of declining demand on oil beyond 2040, 45, 50. Whether it's going to be my view or anybody else's view, it's going to be high competition between various producers, and we are increasingly finding new sources of oil from different sources. And today's problems faced by OPEC were created basically by shale oil and American production rising beyond anything that OPEC has seen in the past. This problem which OPEC is facing today, competition in the markets, they have to reduce production, and probably this competition will continue to some extent in the future. As for Iraq, in my view, probably has the highest reserve of producible oil at reasonable cost from the whole international community. Forget about Venezuela with heavy oil, it's going to be high cost. Forget about tar sands in Canada, they are going to be high cost. But if we look into the cost of production today in Iraq and the potential for long-term capability of producible oil at reasonable costs, we have to look into the implications of competition from now into the future and its meaning and implications for today's policies in Iraq. Iraq has somewhere in the region of 520 anomalies which may, according to historical practice, according to historical evidence, it's about 70% until now of each of these anomalies we will be finding oil. Most of the anomalies which not have been developed are in the northwest of Iraq, and we have somewhere in excess of 400 anomalies which have not been explored properly with some exploration drilling to see whether there is oil and whether there is how much quantity of oil there is. Probably we'll have more gas and light oil in these regions in the Western Desert. What does that mean for the policy today? It means that Iraq, regardless of today's competition and compliance with OPEC lowering production, Iraq is going to have very low-cost oil, probably the lowest cost oil in the world, at its hands in the future. Recently, two papers were published by a very important researcher, Dr. Ali Mirza, on the cost of Iraqi oil today. And they were published in the network of Iraqi economists. He used some simple modeling to come up with reasonable costs, whether present cost or discounted cash flow costs in the future, with a simple model with numbers coming to the region of $4 in various models. The proper cost with the total future potential production from most of Iraqi oil fields today, it's probably in the region of $4 per barrel. And that is not on the average of the Middle East, it's the lowest of major oil producers. And since it is the lowest oil producer with that potential, which could be as much as Saudi Arabia, or in some estimates more than Saudi Arabia, Iraq has to plan now on how to face competition in the future, with the lessons telling us that actually the Ministry of Oil today should continue investing in technology, in potential increase in oil production, and in exploration of areas which have not been explored. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adnan. That was very interesting. Now, going on to the questions, I'd like to start with Mr. Al-Yasiri. Dr. Adnan clearly told us here to forget about high-priced oil. So in this drive for low-cost barrels, how does Iraq compare to other countries? And can you just tell us a little bit about your forward-looking strategy as BP in Iraq?
Right, so I'll start with the second question, probably easier to answer. Can't compete with Dr. Adnan. But in terms of BP's strategy in Iraq, I think there were three key strategies that when we came into Iraq in 2009, the focus has been always on production, people's capability, and community, so Iraq as a whole. And when we talk about production and how we turn Rumaila into a world-class operation model, that takes a lot of obviously initiative to achieve to that goal. So one of it is obviously what's the long-term strategy in terms of development. And after what we've seen in 2014-15 with the lower oil price, there was a discussion with the government, the Ministry of Oil, about sort of what's the most logical way of dealing with Rumaila, and then we turned our strategy from a greenfield approach into a brownfield approach. So with a Rumaila size, a 14 degassing station, we thought we can deliver a lot of more value to Iraq by modernization, transformation, implementation of technology. But then we had to obviously go through a lot of challenges. So one of them is, as I said in my keynote, the field has never seen an amount of water that we're injecting now since it was discovered. So 1.4 million barrels of water, that needs to go somewhere. So obviously with the current facilities, we had to introduce other mega projects to deal with the amount of water. So the likes of dehydrated desalters and free water knockout, where it actually brings the water cut under the acceptable level of 10%. And hence, in the coming years, obviously, will have a significant impact on improving crude quality. Other than that, obviously, the power is a challenging thing in Iraq at the moment. So, we had to think ahead about sort of how to power the field and the facilities using Rumaila's own power plants, and that's what we built in 2018, a world-class power plant that actually can be used for lighting up the field. And at the same time, we have actually helped the government of Iraq to, at the time of summer when there was no electricity in country, so that we put that on the national grid to help more than 10,000 Basrawi homes. But again, that came through a lot of process change and mindset. But what helped us, that brings me to the second point of the strategy we had to focus on, is people's capability. So from day one, from 2010, a sort of customized kind of development plan has been designed for the Iraqi local force, enabling them to attain technology and be able to actually implement them. So you send them on the field and then be able to deliver. That kind of thing will take them to the future, where BP, and it's a 25 years contract, it will end at some point, and then the local force will take their position. We've seen a lot of leaders that actually have come and now leading departments in Rumaila, which is fascinating to me. English language, about more than 2.5 million of hours of training in different disciplines have been delivered, but these trainings are actually customized. So it's not done for the sake of training. It's about how do I prepare this individual to lead a particular discipline within Rumaila operating organization. And you'll see that a lot of people actually have been to Rumaila. It's an amazing organization. But the good thing about this people capability and development is about the integration. So when I say that 93% of local workforce are Iraqis and with a few of expat, that's actually a very positive structure, because what it does to the local workforce there is to give them an on-job training. So it's just not the training in the classrooms that they do, but also on-job training to be able to get or implement what they've learned in classrooms into the real life. And that brings me to the third point in terms of our strategy, which is basically about our strategy and responsibility towards the community. So, you know, with I feel like Rumeila, 1,600 square kilometer of land, obviously the community around us is quite crucial. So whether it's Karmat Ali, where the power, where the water injection plant is, or North Rumeila, South Rumeila communities, we made sure that we work with them very closely and the agreement with BOC and the local government to provide a lot of social projects from health, schooling, recreation center, and then the list is massive. You know, we can just probably take me some time to do it. I know this is got a short time here, but you know, I think these are the three key areas that we focused on, and that obviously the platform for the future, and that's how we're going to deliver Rumeila, and then it will achieve and turn it into a world-class prosperity. Going back to the first question, which is more about sort of, you know, how do we balance between sort of the challenge in the economy versus our operation? I think the oil industry has gone through a lot of calamities, and I think I did actually put on the slides a chart that is more kind of particular and specific to Rumeila, but you can see the dynamic in movement of oil price. What we have learned as an industry is, you know, we're quite adaptive. So we know how to restructure, and the key word I'm going to use over here is how do we attain efficiency? And then that all, you know, there's always a tool to get into that, and one of them is obviously looking at a cost per barrel, and then substitute a lot of processes and procedures that we normally do through technology implementation and use of capabilities in country. The example I've given about the local contractors and then the work that we do with them, not just to give them contract, but actually work with them closely so that they can compete. That's one platform of getting into efficiency. We are doing a lot of pilots in terms of artificial intelligence in Rumeila. Rumeila oil field is actually a digitalized oil field. So what I mean by that is we have the team that sits in a control room. They can see, they can do analyze and assess the performance of each well, and allowing them to do accurate and more specific sort of forecasting in terms of where to drill next, how the wellhead, the manifold are performing. So all that is actually important, but you know, I think the key thing is how to structure the procedure there to get you the right efficient operation.
Thank you for that. I'm going to jump to Mr. Al-Qadi with a question that's also related on Iraq strategy and the upstream sector. We understand that you won 3 blocks in federal Iraq in their 5th upstream bid round last year. It's been 18 months now. Can you give us an update on where these contracts stand?
Thank you very much. I think you're right, actually. The 3 blocks, 2 are in Diyala and 1 in the south, in Basra. And we won the 3 blocks in the border fields bid round. And we did initial, actually, the contracts in June of last year. And we've been told by the Ministry of Oil that the contracts are under process now for ratification by the cabinet, and we're waiting actually for the ratification process to be completed. The way we see it actually as a company is that we have prepared for starting the work in all the 3 blocks, but more specifically in Diyala, in one of the gas blocks. There are multiple actually values in working in these blocks. One of them is that, you know, 2 of them are gas-borne, which means that we'll be able to deliver gas quickly, and I think gas is needed mostly here in Iraq now, as well as in most of the region anyway, but I believe that Iraq needs gas for power generation, among other, you know, industrial also.
Sorry to disturb you, Mr. Al-Qadi. Was there a timeline given to you by the ministry?
Excuse me?
In terms of timelines, was there a specific timeline given?
No, really. I mean, we've been just waiting. We've been told that it is in process. We have not been given any sort of timeline yet, and I hope that His Excellency Thamar Ghadwan was here so to answer this question. So I mean, as a company, we are ready really to start the work once we get the go-ahead by the ministry. we have prepared. We have even prepared the initial development plans for 2 of the blocks. We've carried all the necessary work. We've even hired 2 specific teams, actually, and dedicated teams to start the work on these blocks. So once we get once the whistle blows, we are ready to go ahead and move, inshallah. And we hope that will happen soon.
Hopefully. Keeping with the Iraq upstream theme, I'd like to ask Mr. Hosseini, what advantage does your company have in terms of being a local company operating here? And in terms of volumes of work, we hear that companies are reducing their capex given where oil is. Have you noticed any change in the volumes of works you receive?
Well, I think I missed introducing the company for some of the people who they don't know what Gilgamesh does actually. So Gilgamesh is an oil field service company. When we say that in Iraq the number of oil field companies doing associated drilling services are quite very limited, so very few companies. Now I will take this. I will answer your question first regarding the advantage that we have as a local company. When we started when we came to Iraq in 2009 or 10, right? The first question was, will Iraq take the wave of other countries by pushing local provider or service companies, local service companies, to be in the lead, just like our neighbors? And if we're talking about the region or even globally. So US is the lead on the amount of local service provider, and with respect to the nature of the technologies being used there and here it's different. But the amount of companies, US started the first wave, and then when it comes into Gulf region, today companies in the UAE or Oman or Kuwait, they have driven the cost dramatically down because of the competition there, because of the local companies. Now there is a support from the ministry itself, from the government as a target. I have asked this question one of the years to Mr. Tamer Al-Ghadban during a conference, and he answered me that the intention is there, but still not yet implemented. So, and the intention is still there. As a government, is not really, you don't see it. That's entirely depending on the operator themselves. There are operators who really drive this strongly, and there are operators, they do have other priority in this stage right now. So, but in terms of when I say a local company, there's a minimum requirement that you need to be qualified to do whatever you're doing. Today, one of the issues that we have in Iraq is not only in oil and gas, is the amount of the unqualified companies. They're all presenting and announcing that they're able and they can do it. But it is really a kind of work for the operator or for the client to go and make sure that they're the right companies to come and start doing the services. So on paper, we have probably 10 of thousands of local companies doing oil field services. In reality, there are very few, right?
And in terms of the volume of work, so far, have you noticed any kind of changes, reduction of capex, but in Iraq, in terms of just sheer volumes, can you just brief us?
See, the day that the oil price crashed, the next day you see the number of rigs went down. So that's very, very immediate action will be taken. So you see a lot of the wave is depending on the global economy, right? On the oil prices, on the activity of the country. Today, His Highness Tamer Al-Ghadban was saying that we're cutting we're restricting the exporting, right? And our quota is 4.5 million, and we're discussing with KRG to get aligned with the 4.5 million. So, and they're producing already, let's say, 500,000 barrel. Now, how it looks, definitely there will be a drop on the activity in the upstream, right? Because whether the alignment is there means that we have all, as Iraq, from north to south, we still have to stay with the 4.5, right? And that will affect probably in a short term the activity. So, but if I compare Iraq with the other countries, I think Iraq, because we're still depending 100% of maintaining the production, right? So we still have to, the activity will continue at least with a minimum with the current level. Will not have a complete shutdown like other countries. Right. So, just answering your exact question, that yes, we saw there's a kind of change on the volume, and we saw a huge change on the cost as well. It reached to some point into 50% of the cost, which is for the benefit of the government and the country.
Okay, leading up to, thank you. Leading up to that, Dr. Sun, you warned of price volatility, you warned of the impact of sanctions, and we're hearing now that there is a reduction in work in the upstream sector. I've heard many times from OPEC and OPEC officials saying that there might be a supply crunch in the future. Can you give us your thoughts on that?
Thank you for the question. IEF, we every year invite OPEC, IEA to have an outlook meeting in Riyadh, Saudi. So by this outlook, and just now I elaborate that. By 2040, the fossil fuel still take the major part, the means oil and gas and coal, about 65 to 75%. So that's in the future, we can see that the world and also the population increase will still have the high demand for these the fossil fuels. On the other hand, also we have the issues for the energy transition and the renewables and other issues. And in the morning, I asked a question to His Excellency, the Minister, about what is the top issue for Iraq for the now. And then His Excellency answered the three issues. The first one, how to stabilize the productions and in Iraq. And second one is about the gas. And Iraq, for the oil reserve, number 4 worldwide. Number 4, very high. And also today we know that it's 59 years the birthday for the OPEC. And then here is the place to OPEC studied. So by this one, for gas reserve, Iraq is number 13 worldwide. So by these resources, I feel that is highly for Iraq to stabilize the production and increase the production of the gas. Of course, the third issue is about the refining, the new refineries and the upgrade to the old one. So I feel that for this panel, talk about the upstream issues. I think very important one, investment. Second one is about technology. Especially for the stabilized production, I feel that on one hand, I used to work for oil and gas industry over 30 years as the president, CEO, and others of many companies. So by this, I feel that on one hand is exploration, to find more of the high qualified quality reserve. On the second hand is how to increase the production. I just mentioned that EOR and how to have this. The most cheap is the water injection. So with this high technologies and others, of course, these are many issues, and also by this required to how to increase production and reduce the operating cost. So just now the Vice Chair also mentioned that the oil production, this is the cost. So by this one, I feel that in the near future, now this one is a challenging issue for Iraq, and also is the issue for the worldwide, and for the outlook, we can see that is still a possibility if the upstream in the past 3 years, the reduction of the investment might cause the issues of this the upstream. And however, this year the investment for upstream better than last 2 years, but still have the challenges. So by this, I feel that in the future, near future, we still need the great efforts for these technologies and for the research, for the R&D, and also for the issue of the manpower issue. And also in my speech, I mentioned that now the energy transition and the energy transformation are mixed together. Now we have the 4.0 of this means for artificial intelligence, for the smart grid, for the IT, for the big data, and for the blockchain. All this needs qualified people. Now for the training and the hire the qualified people is a challenge. Yeah, so by this I think it needs efforts for upstream. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Soon. Dr. Adnan, you told us that Iraq needs to prepare now itself and increase its production capacity. I wanted to ask you if you think the 6 million barrels per day target is realistic. And second issue people always talk about is that even if 6 million barrels per day capacity is reached, how will Iraq invest in its infrastructure to export this oil? What needs to be done in order to utilize the capacity?
As to the potential of Iraq, back when I joined the oil industry in 1967, 2 years in the Iraq National Oil Company, we developed a model which was run in the American University of Beirut. At the time, it was the biggest computer available in the area. And we came up with the reserves were then less than 30 billion barrels available, discovered then. And the number of sustainable production level was 9 million barrels per day, 1969. And with the bids in 2010, the incremental oil bid by the companies was to reach 12 million barrels daily. Now, when we are talking about the potential of the future and the anomalies which have to be explored, there are 2/3 of total oil anomalies available in Iraq with a probability of 70% finding in each of one of them. The potential of Iraq is probably one of the highest in the world, excepting Venezuela, heavy oil, and tar sands in Canada. This means that today we have to continue investing, as I said, in technology, in infrastructure, and in outlets, as well as exploration in the western areas. As for the export destinations, as you heard from Tamer Al-Ghadban, we are already considering 2.25 million barrels of pipeline from the south to Haditha, and probably to have a hub there to export through a 1 million barrels daily extra to Jihan and 1 million barrels daily to Aqaba. So we are already working and investing in export terminals as well as in the Gulf. We hope that there will not be any serious disruption there. That is for the future and for politics. I am talking about implications today for Iraq. Investments in export potential is one of the lowest in the world. Exploration is not very expensive. Technology is imperative on everybody. What we need to do is a little bit more drilling and some infrastructure surface installations, and that is not going to be very expensive. Iraq should have and should be ready to have some excess capacity now to be able to use its potential in the future.
Thank you, Dr. Adnan. I think we might have run out of time. We might have a chance for one question from the audience, if anyone has a question. I don't see any hands up. It means like everyone's hungry. It's almost lunchtime. So I would like to thank my panelists and everyone here. Thank you very much. Thank you.